This meeting is being recorded.
And we'll go ahead and get started here. We're wanted to gather and talk about next season's work that we're going to be doing in 2025. And we sent out a survey to all of you all and got some really good results. We had about 140 people that took part in the survey, so we'll be talking about some of the results from that as well. But what we're looking to do this next year is we're going to be moving to a new site over at by the temple. And so what's exciting is we'll be back on the main part of the visitor grounds, and we'll have access to visitors, and we haven't been up at the main house since about 2019. 2019 when we finished up with the Pine Lay survey. So it's been a beat since then. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the site we're going to be moving on to first, and then after that we'll go and talk about the results from the survey. So, and if you haven't done the survey yet, we're still collecting responses on that. So, just if you haven't done it, don't feel like you've missed the boat. We still are taking in information on all this, but excited to report out what we've had so far. So, well, I'll go ahead and share screens with you all, and let's see, share screen 2 here, and hopefully, can you all see the map on the screen? Got one of the GIS maps here. Okay, thanks, Peggy. You see the thumbs up. But where we're going to be working is over by the temple. So here's the main house is right in this location right here. There's the main house. The temple is right over here. The visitor center, of course, is in this location to the southwest. And then the site we're working on right now, the burial ground, is over in this area, in the woods here. So that gives you kind of a lay of the land. And with the metal detector surveys we've done over the past several years, there's an area that we looked at several years ago, back in 2021. We did a 20-meter survey. Dennis did a 20-meter survey across here and found several sites. And then we came back in 2022 and Dennis and one of the metal detecting expeditions in the fall did a 10-foot metal detector survey in this area that's partially where where it's in grass, but also partially in the woods. And here's a shot of what this area looks like. So you probably recognize this. Here are here's Annapolis, Accra, and Battleship, and then here's the temple in the background, and the main house is hidden behind the fir tree right here. But this area of just an incredible concentration of metal and historic objects that Dennis and others located in these metal detector surveys. And so one of the house areas, this one right here, when you look at the map, it is located right in this area. And then the other one is located a little bit further downslope. And this one is on the toe of the slope looking down towards the pond in this direction. And with these 2 sites, this actually is just a portion of the sites that are in this area. If you look at the 20-meter surveys, let me see if I've got the 20 on here. Oh my goodness, I've got too many layers here, folks. Let me see if I can find this. Oh, I need to zoom out one. There it is. So if you look at the 20-meter surveys here, you can see this entire area is one big concentration of artifacts, and from the 20-meter surveys. And then when you zoom in, this is when these smaller areas get defined. But in doing the 20-meter surveys, Dennis also located another house area up in this area on the other side of where the road comes in. So if y'all have walked down this area, there's a road trace that leads from the temple down in this direction, and then down to the ice pond. So this was the road where the enslaved workers would cut ice, haul it up in a wagon, and then end up depositing it in the ice house in the entrance. And inside of this roadway, you've got these two houses here, but then on the other side of this this road, what you've got is another house site in this location. And then in between these two house sites and the temple, what you've got is a area that in metal detector survey, this is a 20-meter metal detector survey, there's concentrations of blacksmithing activities in here that are between the one house site and the temple, which is this 18th century blacksmith shop. And so this area just has all kinds of sites in it. And one of the things that we've been looking at is examining the initial results from the metal detector survey. There's a mix between the yellow dots here are cut nails, but then when you look at the number of wrought nails, there's a much higher concentration of wrought nails in this area, all these yellow dots. And one thing, when we were doing the metal detector surveys, there were ceramics that were coming out of here that showed up in the plugs, which for a metal detector survey shows that there's a good amount of artifacts in this location. And we're going to be on Friday, we're going to start digging shovel test pits in this area, and then continue in the fall with more shovel test pits at these two sites to understand the concentration of non-metal items, so like the ceramics and the glass. And then, of course, with the ceramics, that's going to give us a better date on these two, at least on these two sites. And what we're wondering about these sites is, what the time frame is that they date to. Are they ones that date to the 19th and to the 18th century? Are they house sites that were occupied continuously from the period when the blacksmith was in operation during the Revolutionary War into the early 19th century? And we're going to be assessing this with the shovel test pit surveys, and that's going to inform where we begin to place units next spring. So there's lots we're going to be exploring with these sites in this area. And what's really special about these sites, though, is that these are some of the last areas at the main house and in the visitor core that we've not explored archaeologically. So what the excavations we're going to be doing represents is the testing of one of these last set of sites that visitors would have direct access to. And so what we want to do after with the testing of this area is then begin to also assess what areas we're going to turn to in the future. So with the excavations we're going to be doing starting in 2026 and 2027, are there sites that we want to focus on in terms of doing more intensive excavations like we've done at the overseer's house in the South Yard. And so this will give us this final set of inventories of these sites that are in this area. So does anybody have any questions so far about the sites here and what we're looking at? And I think we've got an expedition here this week, and I think Elizabeth and Chris are getting everybody set up over in Claude Moore Hall. We were going to be in the field today, but then we got rained out. So we got rained out, so we ended up bringing everybody into the lab. So like normal with an expedition, we've got things that are scheduled, but then we've had to shift things on the fly. So. But yeah, so yeah.
So you're on first thought, the presence of the wrought nails makes you think that those houses, homes are of the same era as that blacksmith shop, as the original blacksmith site? You think?
Potentially, yeah. It's hard to say. This is where we want to do the shovel test pits, and then because with the ceramics, we'll be able to get a finer date. What we found is like when we looked at the sites in the South Yard, for instance, that dated to the 1820s based on the ceramics, there were a slightly higher amount of cut nails there than wrought nails. But when you look at the same dating set of homes over at the home farm that we excavated in 2013, there were more wrought nails there, but there was a presence of machine cut nails. And so in that case, with the South Yard, it looked like those buildings had more cut nails because those were being built with the intention of being with the framing and with the clapboard siding, and were more intensive, had more intensive construction materials being placed into them. But then the field quarters, where the enslaved blacksmiths were living and the folks that were running the farm, those are log structures. And there was probably a lot of the nails that were out there were from recycling of nails and materials by the inhabitants of those homes. And so with the buildings that are in this area that we're looking at over by the temple in Walnut Hollow, what we're wondering is it looks, we would assume that these are log structures in here and there would be a higher number of wrought nails. So what's really going to give us an idea of the date, Peggy, is the ceramics. So literally like Friday, we're going to start these shovel test pits and we'll have a better idea of what kind of ceramics and glass we'll be finding, and we'll be able to begin to answer that question. So we're really anxious to get into the shovel test pits there and see what comes out.
Matt, was this the same place, I don't know how many expeditions ago, a couple expeditions ago, where Dennis had found, we found a piece of jewelry in a shovel test pit, and then he also, didn't he find like a 1800s coin? Was this the same area? Okay.
Exactly. He found a late Victorian piece of jewelry that was probably from the DuPont era, and then also found an 1820s Liberty coin. And so, there's the presence of the domestic material like the buttons and coins seems to indicate that it goes into the 1820s, the occupation does, and for the homes that were in this area. But the ceramics are going to give us a much better idea about this. So, and what's really exciting about this site is when you look at it on the landscape, when you look from the house over to the temple in this area, what's dominant in this area is the temple and then the woodlot behind it. But with the homes that were in this location, they more than likely would have been visible along the carriage road, and the presence of the families in this area. The archaeology has given testimony to their presence at this location, and really rounds out the picture of that for the main house there would have been homes of the enslaved would have been in the South Yard and then up in this area as well. And what's going to be interesting is what evidence we have for the kind of architecture that's in this area. Are they similar to what we found in the South Yard with
hey, what's up, dude?
The presence of the window glass and lots of more cut nails, like so suggesting a timber frame structure? Or are these buildings more similar to what we have in the field quarter, where there's a much more wrought nails? And when you look at the buildings, what these look like, these log structures, log homes, with very little in the way of window glass. So I think even with the shovel test pits, we're going to get an immediate idea of what this area is looking like. And let me turn off some of these metal detector surveys so you can actually see the landscape here. So what we're going to be able to do with the work we're doing next year is put the homes that are up in this area. So this is the area we're working in right up here. Put what we find of the evidence for the homes at this location in the context of what we found in the South Yard, and then also in the context of the field quarter as well. So with the work we've done over the past 20 years, we're gonna be able to pretty rapidly assess how these fit into the larger spectrum of homes that we found across the across this space. And then again, with that, we'll be able to, better contextualize, how how this area was seen by the Madisons in terms of how it fits into the formal landscape, and then also by the enslaved community. I mean, these were, from what we've seen so far, these are homes of enslaved families, and how they fit into this larger pattern. And one thing we're super curious about with the ceramics is if these date to the 1820s, is there the presence of the bamboo and peony ceramic that we found across the property? And again, we're going to be able to put these in a much larger context. And one of the things we're really interested in doing with this, of course, is what's the next phase for archaeology after next season? Do we go back to the home farm? Do we open more units up in this area to understand better about the context of the homes that are up by the temple? Or is there an interest in going and looking at all the sites we found in the Eastwoods? And a lot of this gets into, what direction Montpelier and the MDC is going with interpretation. Are we looking to expand what the visitor focus is at Montpelier, beyond just the historic core to the larger property? And this gets into, questions about, what, are we trying to make Montpelier, is there opportunities to make Montpelier into an all-day experience? And by having more information about sites that are further out from the historic core, does this make, for more opportunities for visitors when they're here? So this, what we're looking to do with the work is, we've got, when you look at the metal detector surveys that we've done over the years, we've really been able to focus in on areas that have the highest potential for visitor, expansion. Like we're up by the schooling barn in this area, where we've often thought about, a venue up in here as a restaurant, something like that. The one area that we have not, that we want to continue to do our metal detector survey on is potentially like out in Centerfield, because of course every visitor drives through this area. And, is there, starting in 2025, would we be looking to do, instead of focusing in more excavations on a single area, do we want to do more survey across the property? So this is where, we want to really have some conversations next year in 2025 when we're doing these surveys, not just about the site that we're looking at right here, but expand these conversations to what about the future for what we're doing with archaeology? Do we want to stick to this visitor core? Do we want to expand out to the larger property? And what does this represent with what the board and MDC's vision is for Montpelier? So it's some exciting times to really begin to look towards, with this, we're talking about the 2025 season and doing surveys up in, this one area of the historic core that we know there's a site, but we don't know an awful lot about this site, to looking at, how archaeology fits in with the next, 10 to 20 year picture of Montpelier. And then have us be in a place where we can begin to expand, what we know about this property. Are we going to focus on the historic core, or are we going to look much larger? So lots of things that we'll be, begin to be directing our conversations and examination on, this coming year. But it's an exciting time in terms of where the next focus is. And then, of course, in the middle of this, we're going to be setting up in 2025 the new lab over at the Esso building, which is the Community Archaeology Lab at Montpelier. And for an update on that, we've contracted with Gaines Haney to begin work on that. And over the next week, he's going to start, doing some initial work on the building. So there'll be progress on this in the very near future. So, anybody have any questions about any of this before I switch over and start talking about the survey, the expedition survey that we sent out earlier? And Anybody in archaeology, like Chris and Liz or Steve, do you have anything else to add on this?
I'm just excited to get into that, one of Dennis's poppy fields again.
Yeah, absolutely. And this, what Gail you're referring to is obviously this
Up-
poppy field like that. Yeah,
Yes, yes.
the red flag. So
Each time we saw it, we told you then, we got reservations there. So
well, yeah, there'll be a unit waiting for you all. So no,
Matt.
Same
yeah.
here.
Hey, Pam. Okay, Pam. Yeah, absolutely. You're with us right there as well. So
Hey, Matt,
yeah.
I wanted to ask, does the finding of these otherwise previously unknown sites of domestication, does that change in any way the interpretation of the Pinelay? In other words, does it reinforce or change what you already knew about the Pinelay? Did the Pinelay come up after those homes were no longer there? Or was it
Oh.
hiding them?
Yeah, that's a good
Is it
question, Peggy. That's
camouflaging? Oh.
yeah, the Pinelay, and Chris, you can tune in, come in on this as well, because Chris wrote a whole thesis on this. But yeah, the
Yeah.
presence of these homes definitely reflects on the Pinelay. Because when you look at the Pinelay in this context,
Right.
this is the a shot of the Pinelay from the looking, a bird's eye view from the portico down to the temple. And these pine trees, would have not only provided a directed view to the temple, but you're right, from the portico, these potentially would have been screening from view these homes that are further down in this area, because without the Pinelay, from the portico, you'd have a direct line of sight into this area. So
Right.
that's a really good point, Peggy, is, what does the Pinelay represent? Is it a view towards the temple? I've got another shot of let me see.
Or is
Yeah.
it a privacy screen? Yeah.
Is it a privacy screen? And probably the answer is yes to both.
Okay.
But yeah, this is where, understanding how these homes, how they sit on the landscape, where the activities are in relationship to the buildings themselves, all this informs, how we talk about the temple, how we talk about the ice pond, how we talk about the ice house, the Pinelay. This builds this broader context. So yeah. Thank you, Peggy. Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, Matt, it's Tony.
Yeah. Hey, Tony.
How you doing?
Good.
So, good. So when I was down there last week, Dennis and I walked out to this area, and there was some of the woods right below where the grass areas where we had done the expedition on that had been cleared, and also he and I had done some detecting in that area. Are your STPs going to be going into that wooded area as well?
Oh, down right in this area where my arrow is, Tony.
No, it was it was right down below where you had your other shots. It was down further to right there. I'm sorry. Yeah,
right here. Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
correct. Because there was we found some interesting artifacts in there, as well as some stones that appeared to be could be corner foundations, for supports.
Yeah, Chris and I were just talking about that today. We're this winter time, I'm going to work with Robert on having him clear out this area of some of the vegetation, and that way, when we get into next summer, we'll have a cleaner area to be working in. And then also, when it's about 90 degrees out, we can reserve the work for the heat of the summer in the shade, because that's been one really nice thing about the archaeology of memorialization this year is being in the shade. It just provides a lot of cool in that area.
Right.
So,
Right. Okay, good. Thanks.
yeah. So yeah, definitely, Tony, we're going to be strategic about this. So, and then also there is a site that Dennis found just on the other side of the road here in this area that is this major concentration of cut nails, and looks like a a building that was just right below the sod.
But you know where they were so careful, the Madisons were so careful to cover or to try and not make the South Yard as noticeable because of the Grove and things like that, that the difference of the buildings and how careful they were of what they looked like. You'd wonder what are those on that side gonna look like if they were that intent on not publicizing their helps lodging.
Yeah, the families, I think all these buildings would have been very visible from different parts on the landscape. But these constructed views that the Madisons had from for example, the portico, yeah, this is where, yeah, all like we're talking about the context of this in relationship to the formal landscape, to what would have been woods back in the day. Was this woods at the time? That's another thing we want to look at. And one of the things we'd be interested in doing is, doing some looking at some of these trees in here for potential dendrochronology. This grove of trees in here, and what's called, there is an 1899 Puritan magazine article where the Walnut Hollow was called Walnut Dell in 1899, and in the Puritan magazine it's talked about as one of Dolly's favorite haunts. And so this is probably from oral history, and you put that into context of the homes being in this area, there's probably no masking of, the presence of the enslaved is all across the space. But again, it's how these views are carefully constructed that where things are obscured or not obscured, that gets to be interesting.
So Matt, Vicky Quarles here.
Hey, Vicky.
Hey, so is part of the goal to rebuild, recreate these enslaved people's homes? Is that part of the goal? I'm kind of new to Montpelier, so I'm not sure.
That's one of the questions we're going to be asking next year is, one thing we definitely want to do is represent the homes on the landscape, whether through signage or ghost timber framing. And then what we want to do next year in 2025 is begin to start to look at what would be the next set of priorities for excavations and surveys. Kind of what is missing from the landscape, what's missing from the interpretive story that archaeology could fill in those gaps. And so that's where next year, what we want to do is, with the work we're going to be doing in setting up the lab and being kind of a transition period, we want to take 2025 as a time period to assess this one last site that was of intense occupation in the late 18th, early 19th century, and assess it. But then again, put that into the context of all the other excavations we've done over the past 20 years, both the home farm areas of the stable yard, but then also surveys we've done across the 2,600 acres, and then begin to look at what is this next phase we want to look at, and take a look at our 20-year plan at Montpelier, and then fit in the next 5 or 6 years in terms of planning of grants, and what the kind of next phase would be. So that's where we've got a really good situation set up with a relationship with MDC, with planning with Montpelier, and then of course all of you all as well. So, and we're going to have the expedition season focus on this. We're going to have a couple of expeditions where we're going to be having these kind of conversations.
One of the things, Matt, when the new administration took over months ago, we mentioned in a conversation, from our perspective, we hope that Montpelier will be made into a true destination place and not just a stopover. And I just feel the more interest that you can get with opening more of these sites and these locations and more things for the people to really see, the history, live, a live touch it kind of history, more people will want to come and spend more than just an afternoon.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, and man, one of the things I've said to you before, I hope in some of these areas, when we finish doing excavations and things, that we'll put up more ghost houses so people can see that there were real buildings here. It wasn't this beautiful swath of grass and trees and everything, that this was a very busy place, which a lot of the other places don't give you at all.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true, Pam. And it actually gets us into, what we want to look at next, which is the results of the survey. Because that's something we did ask is, what other sorts of programs we want to do, and that's going to fit into with the. I'll talk about the log cabin programs that we've done in the past, and that would be a way of doing, like you said, Pam, these kind of ghostings of structures. So I'm gonna flip over to the results of the survey, and this next slideshow I've compiled results from what the survey results are, and what I want to begin with is some of the demographic information of what who the survey respondents were. So we had about 130 survey respondents, and this is kind of the age demographics. Fell into really roughly 3 different categories. One was, folks that were roughly, students and working age, folks that were in like me, that are in the transition from working age to, kids are out of the house, you're in the later parts of your career, and then a lot of folks who are retired. And when you look at who the respondents were, the vast majority of how the respondents have been, how they've been interacting with us is through the lunch and learns, 48%, nearly 50%, and then also, of course, a lot of expedition members. And then to other degrees, folks on social, have seen our results on social media, and then volunteers and visitors. And when you look at, who of the 130 respondents, there were about 36% that have never taken part in a program, which we were excited about because we wanted to have this be, be a survey that would allow us to understand what direction we wanted to go in the future to bring new people on as well. And then everybody else is, to varying degrees, all are alumni, but some have been on one program and others have been on more than one program. And when you look at the age groupings for this, they're roughly similar in terms of, the majority of what we call, the alumni, folks that have been in a program. Future expeditioners, these are folks that haven't been on an expedition, but we're hoping they'll be on an expedition soon. The majority are 65 and older, and then going down to in ages to students and folks in their early career. Now, when we look at so with these categories, what I'm going to use from here on out is going to break the respondents into 3 different groups. One is the from 16 to 50, basically working age folks, 50 to 64, folks that have a little more flexibility with their schedule, and then 65 or older, folks that have a lot more flexibility. And when you look at the breakdown, it's roughly a little bit more in terms of 50 to 64 than folks that haven't been on a program. But this gives you an idea of who the survey respondents were. And for one of the first questions we asked about was, what sort of programs, new programs, folks would be interested in. And we wanted to put in here are programs that we haven't done in a couple of years, and ones that we haven't done at all. And so one of the ones that came to the top was, genealogy and preserving historical documents. And this came out of a conversation that we had with George Monroe, who's the new executive director of the MDC. And for genealogy, this is something that we'd want to work directly with the MDC on, because the MDC has a current initiative to do oral history and genealogy programs. And for this, there is a program on oral history that the MDC is organizing. I believe it's on November 6th. And I didn't know if either Iris or Madeline, you wanted to say anything about that, about, general availability and attendance of that. I think I saw Madeline on the call earlier.
I can start.
Hey, Madeline.
Hey,
How are
how are
you?
you? I'm good. How are you, Matt?
Good, good.
So we formed a collaboration team. So it's made up of organizations from the Orange region. So I'll tell you which team, because we wanted to kind of get a cross section of people to begin to work together, because our plan is to offer a train the trainer oral history workshop series. So at this point, we're working with the Orange County African American Historical Society, the Madison County African American Historical Society, the Orange County Historical Society, Historic Germanna, Blue Run Baptist Church, Carver, Four County Museum, Montpelier, and the MDC at this point. And we're hoping that we can expand it to some other groups. Emily at Montpelier has let us know that there may be some other organizations, like from Louisa County. Reverend Anthony at Blue Run Baptist Church has indicated, adding some other churches that might be interested. So on November the 9th, from 9 to 12, we will be conducting an oral history workshop, with the focus being on training people on all the steps and the process, and a little bit of practice as well during the workshop on conducting oral history interviews. And the plan from that would be that those persons who attend would then go back to those organizations and train more people, who can also train more people and reach out to people in the community. And we're planning after that one, at some point, we want to do a train the trainer workshop for teachers. And then we want to also do one for students. I don't know if it's middle school and high school, or just high school students, because we want people to be trained and go out and record the oral histories of people. And we're working on then the process of how we want to archive that information. We haven't finalized all of that yet, but we're still working on that. So November the 9th, we will be doing that. And at this point, we haven't sent out flyers yet, but it will be at Montpelier in, what's the building next to Lewis Hall, Matt?
Claude Moore.
Yeah, Claude Moore. And that's where we will be conducting that. Should I say something about genealogy?
Yeah, that'd be great. That'd be great, Madeline.
Okay. So I know Iris and Matt spoke, and Matt did share with us that people did express interest in genealogy and all of those sorts of things. So we're thinking possibly working with Matt sometime maybe in the spring or early summer, or something, that we can actually have a genealogy workshop, which of course would have to span a few days. We couldn't do that in a 3-hour period. So, we certainly want to open all of those things up to people, anybody who's really interested.
Well, thank you, Madeline. That's great. And well, I was the other morning was talking with Iris about this. I'm going to get into this in a second, is how we're looking to structure this so that it could fit into a week program, but that a week-long program, but then also be a 2-day program as well. And we kind of experimented with this year and last year as well with some of the descendant digs that we did that were during a week-long program, but the last 2 days. So, but this is great. So yeah, for the and to go back to, I'll go back to the slideshow in a second, but with the genealogy, we'd want to genealogy workshops. We'd want to collaborate with the MDC and with your group, Madeline, that is doing these programs, because you'll have the expertise on this, and we'd be able to put it into the context of Montpelier. But then, you know, it'd be a great collaboration. Really appreciate it, Madeline. And Sakina, I see you have your hand raised.
Yes, I had a suggestion to use like a youth group for internship, or like an expedition, or to use like a genealogy group, and to have them come and to use let's say when they're going out on numerous expeditions, to use a rubric for questioning. So after they finish the series of excavations, they would share their findings through this rubric, where they would answer questions as like the artifact's location, the methods used, the period that the artifact was used, who used the artifact, whether it was the indigenous or the Madison family, or the DuPont or the enslaved community, or through post-emancipation. When was the artifact made? The purpose of the artifact, let's say if it was used for farming or gardening or construction or burial, clothing, and to have them answer the question at the end as to how have these excavations or this information, how has it caused them to rethink or reimagine or to reinterpret history?
Wow, that's really deep, Sakina. That's something like Chris just noted in the text, artifact biographies. Yeah, that would be a takeaway that would be really powerful to add to this. So yeah, thanks, Sakina. We'll need to talk.
And not only that, you can use, like, I remember when I was like 14 years old, we had paid partnerships from the city. I mean, I lived in New York, so there was a lot of resources with these programs that you can partner with some of these youth organizations that give internship for youth, and they would pay for it. I don't know about Virginia.
Yeah, this is certainly that's something that we could look towards applying for a grant for. And yeah, Sakina, these are the kind of ideas that we want to have discussions about next year, and really start to plant some seeds in terms of grants we can apply for, donation campaigns that we can work on, is to really use this 2025 season not only to do an inventory of this, for example, this one side of Montpelier near the temple, but also begin to reimagine what the rest of, for the next 10 years, what we're going to be doing with archaeology. And it's really going to be an open format for this. So thanks, Sakina.
I belong to a genealogy group, and we partner with the National Archives. So I try like once a month for our group to go and do research.
Okay. Cool.
Matt.
Oh, sorry, Sakina.
No, it's Gail. One of the things that kind of fits in with this, our oldest daughter was a history teacher for over 30 years. And one of the most memorable things of her former students that come and talk to her and see her is one of her assignments, more than 1 year, was for them to do an oral history with either someone in their family over a certain age, or a friend that they know, or a friend of their grandparents that they knew. And they found that, she found that was very productive and brought in a lot of information that was shared with the rest of the class, and also built their family records and everything. And you're talking about bringing in this younger group, and that's involve the high schools, get them involved in maybe going out and looking for friends of their family or something like that.
Yeah, and that is going to be something we're moving into next year as well, with getting high school students involved. Well, what I want to do is I'm going to switch back to the presentation, because I want to show the rest of the results from the survey, and then we can get back to the discussion. But one of the other some of the other survey results for new programs is, genealogy that we're just talking about. The next most popular one overall amongst everybody was the log cabin programs, with 21 folks suggesting that. And then for these log cabin programs, these are ones we've done in the past. But in order to make them successful, we work with Craig Jacobs, and we're paying him as an outside contractor. So a lot of times we need to apply for grants to match the expeditions to make a complete budget. I mean, oftentimes Craig will do this without being paid the full amount, but I don't want to do that to Craig, because that, he can't survive off of that, doing that all the time. So we want to have it be sustainable. So for the log cabin programs, we're going to need a little more advance notice for that, to apply for a grant and to do the expedition, similar to like what we do with archaeology. The next most frequent one that was with the highest frequency was blacksmithing programs, where, given next year we're going to be looking at a site that's was in close proximity to the 18th century blacksmith shop, and with a metal detector survey, we found blacksmith items in that location. It would be useful to do some blacksmithing activities to understand, what we're finding. And this especially is what, when Steve and I were talking about this, is thinking about these sorts of programs, and a lot of the ones that are coming up next, as being an afternoon or a day as part of a week-long or a 2-day program. And this would give, a week-long program something new at the end of the week to really get into. So for example, with blacksmithing, what we could do is contract with a local blacksmith, or folks that we know that do blacksmithing, have an afternoon of demonstrations of blacksmithing, and maybe another afternoon where Liz gets out a lot of the blacksmith items that we found through the archaeology, and the blacksmith with expedition members identifies, the kind of metal items that we're finding, characteristics of the slag, be able to, combine this with the expedition program. The next most popular one was cooking programs, which we of course do and are doing. These are ones that we've partnered with folks at Old Salem, mainly Jerome Bias and Leslie Duncan, they're going to be coming on the program in October and doing some cooking over at Arlington House with participants. So these are ones that we're planning for next year. And then also one of the final ones was looking at trees and gardening type activities. And so we're looking to do another arboristry program next spring, and do this as like an afternoon or a 1-day part of a week-long program. And then when you look at, when we started to break down the results from types of programs with some of the demographics, one thing that we saw is with alumni expeditioners, basically the trends here follow the overall trends in terms of what people were looking at. And then when we looked at folks who haven't come on programs at all, it's also roughly the same. But when we broke it down by age, between 16 and 50, 50 to 64, and 65 plus, what we started to see is that, the genealogy was still a very popular option. But what came up with folks between 16 and 50 is there was also interest, an accelerated interest in cooking programs And in that, I'd lump in there foraging, cooking and foraging probably can be combined. And then with the age groups is between 50 and 64, one of the most popular ones was the log cabin program. So, we're seeing some trends here that will allow us to, begin to, create some programs for the 2025 season to, again, do some experimentation with the programs that we do, but also to look for the future as well in terms of what how we're going to develop what our programs are. And again, as y'all might have guessed, this is coming out of kind of our rebirth out of what happened in April with the fire at the lab, and then rebranding with the new community archaeology lab at Montpelier, which will be over at ESO. So another part that we looked at with the survey is the length of programs. This is something that we've looked at for a long time and experimented with. And overall, the first choice, pretty much among all groups is the week-long program. And then in terms of overall among 131 participants, if there was a second choice, it would be a 2 to 3 day program. But overwhelmingly, the week-long programs seem to be what people are looking at. But then when you start looking at these selections by age group, when you look at again the different constituencies in terms of age, in terms of the week-long programs, these still appear to be most popular, the week-long programs. But when you look at the ages between 16 and 50, there's a strong group that are looking at weekend programs. And then when you get into 50 to 64 and 65 plus, there seems to be, again, the preference for the week long, but then the 2 to 3 day program, which can be during the weekday. So with putting all this together, what we're looking at is for next season and is to continue our week-long programs, but then at the end of the week, create a 2-day program that would give folks an option to not come for the whole week, come for a 2-day program, but then also for the week-long participants to have a completely new experience as part of the expedition. And with this is the preliminary schedule, and this is something we want to do, have some more discussions about. This is what, we worked out. Steve and I worked this out earlier this week based on the survey. But to do, for example, in the springtime, do a week-long archaeology and arboristry, with our arboristry being on Thursday and Friday, April 20th through 25th. And talking to Jerome, this would be a good week for him for doing an archaeology and cooking. Again, archaeology during the first 3 days and then cooking the last 2. Early May, do an archaeology program, but at the end, have discussions about, what sites there are at Montpelier to begin to do more intensive either survey or excavations on, and continue the discussion we've got today with all of this. Our field school will be the field school. We're going to be doing that, up at Walnut Hollow. High school program's the same. Collegiate program, much more of the same there. And then our alumni program, this is one that, we want to have some discussions in the spring to look at what we do with this one. And then finally in October, do an archaeology and blacksmithing. And I think we're going to need to we want to have some time on this, both for advertising, but also to get a blacksmithing partner to help us with this one. So I'll go ahead and stop sharing screens now. And what we want to do is over the next couple of weeks is produce a report from the survey to give you all a better sense of what we found with the survey, and also have this discussion be hopefully inspired for more people, if you haven't done the survey, to go and do it. We kept the survey anonymous, so there's no guilt whether you've done it or not done it. We're not looking at anybody here. But if you haven't, you know who you are, and just go ahead and take some time to do it. So, but yeah, any other, let's see if what we got in the discussion, the chat here. And I saw, did anyone else? Oh, Carolyn, I see you have your hand up.
Hi, Matt.
Hi,
And
Carolyn.
Hi. I've been on 4 expeditions and planning on coming back shortly in October. About the interviews, learning how to interview, and the genealogy. During the last several years, she told me family stories, and I had her write them down. And then we had somebody type them up, had somebody else type them up, so that somebody else who didn't know the family stories like I did could proofread and ask the right questions, like who are you referring to in the certain pronouns. And then we had them reproduced, 100 copies to give to all the relatives, because she was one of 6. They are family treasures. Now, this provided connections to lots of family members. And so getting young people interested, as Madeline and Sakina and Gail were talking about, helping young people learn how to interview instead of being tied to their phones, talking face to face with older people, making those connections. And those are treasures, real treasures. And especially, I hear people say, oh, I wished I asked my grandmother such and such, and now she's gone. But if you ask them now.
No, thank you, Carolyn.
Gold.
I think that what you just said is very much reflected in the survey results and what folks are interested in. And again, we're really fortunate now to have the teamwork with the MDC, who very much are focused on, right now the oral history workshops, and then as Madeline mentioned, tying this in with some genealogy workshops. So there's some real collaborative future with this, which we're excited about. But yeah, look forward to seeing you in October, y'all in October. So great to have you all back. Anyone else? I know Chris and Liz and Steve, did you all have anything else to add in with this, with the survey? I know Steve got some great quotes from the survey that he compiled.
Matt, I think we can include those in the report.
Oh, that would be great. Yeah, thanks, Steve. Yeah, that would be really nice to be able to do. So. Yeah, and Susan, yeah, we're very excited about the ceramics at the site as well, the next site at the Walnut Hollow, because that's going to give some real insight into the dates for that. But yeah, thanks, Steve. We gotta start on that report with what you did with that, and we'll give it another probably another week to get more folks to respond, and we'll send out this recording as well.
Matt.
Yeah. Hey, Susan.
Susan, for excavating next year, when would be the best time to come out to really dig in? Early in the season, later in the season? I'm excited to get back in the field.
Any time would be good, and we still have slots open for the early October program, and which is going to be coming up, and then we also have slots available in the equestrian program that Liz is leading in November. But then we'll start up with the regular expeditions in early April, and potentially we'll be doing some shovel test pits in March as well. We're still working out the schedule for that, but I'd say anytime next year. I mean, what works best for you and for everybody else. So come in the spring and summer and fall. So thanks, Susan.
Thanks.
Well, Well, we're at the 1 o'clock mark, so thank you all for spending time with us on this today. And if we'll be sending out the survey results, but then also the full schedule that we'll have developed as well. And again, this 2025 season we're looking at as a way to begin to experiment with, you know, some new programs and see what works, and then also look towards the future. So thank you all for being part of this and putting your thoughts in. So really appreciate all of you all. So
Thanks, Matt.
Thank
See you
you.
soon.
okay, bye everybody.
Bye.
Bye all.